Hello.
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 Okay. This is talking about how we're going to handle the getting various settings that we have in the remote development settings module over to the agent. And there's like a few ideas to it. There's maybe something we could leverage in the CAS communication. We could make like a whole new dedicated API for it. But what I proposed, and it's in the updated issue link in Zoom, is let's just leverage the reconciliation loop for this. The reason that makes a lot of sense to me is because we already have that. Like, it's there. We already inject the settings module into all of these main classes, or like at least one of the others. It would, just be a matter of one line. So then we have it available and we can pull out what we want. And we could structure this to be in a way that agents are always like, I don't know, forward or backward compatible. I don't know which way you would say it, but basically that old agents would not break if we design it so that the agent requests what settings it wants. And then on the rail and in the reconciliation, agent infos. And then on the Rails side, it validates that those match, that whatever, all the things it requests matches an actual setting that exists, and sends them back. And then on the agent side, it'll just parse those out. And I don't know how you would do this in like type safe Go or whatever, but basically in some way that it pulls those out of an array or some generic structure that could have multiple different types in it, and then uses them for whatever it wants. So then that would be the plumbing. And then in this case, we would go ahead and use the reconciliation interval, but we can also use it for other things, like we just said, the timeout or anything else we need to send in the future. And what I like about this is that in this way, like, not only is the agents backward compatible, but when we want to add a new setting for the agent, like, there's literally no changes on the Rails side other than just adding the setting, and then everything else will just work, and then add the request for it on the agent side. So there's like zero maintenance and we don't have to change protobufs, and like, it's just a lot less maintenance going forward. So that's from.
I agree with that the reconciliation is a good first step for non-sensitive information. You did raise an interesting point over there for sensitive information. And I think for sensitive information is where Mikhail's proposal of having first-class support to CAS comes in. That's a good idea, but we don't need it right now, so we don't have to worry about it.
Well, I think we should worry about the sensitive information, but I think the way to do that is to just have another field in the settings, which is like sensitive, and it's not allowed to send anything that's sensitive to the agent.
I mean, yes, so it's not allowed to send it, but if it's not allowed to send it in the reconciliation loop, but if there is some sensitive information that we need to pass on to the agent,
Well,
we need
yeah,
some mechanism, right?
that's why I intentionally called that flag like not is this sensitive. That's not the right variable. It's can be sent to agent, right?
Yes.
That would be the only thing
Yeah.
sent to agent if it requested it is the ones with that true. So then that's the control, and then they would never be able to request something that it shouldn't be sent to the agent.
Right. And what I was saying is, if the future need arises where we have to send sensitive information to the agent, then the proposal that Mikhail said of having first-class support in CAS would be the right way to do it. Right now, we don't need it.
I don't understand why. Why is that any more secure than sending it over the reconciliation loop?
The way it
Still, the data is
requests,
still ending up on the agent, on the whatever trust the environment that the agent is running in, the data is still going to end up there. It doesn't matter how it gets there. And these are like SSL, encrypted mechanisms, both for the CAS communication and for the reconciliation. So I don't really see the difference.
I am not, interesting point. They use both of these communication will use the same authorization strategy.
Yeah, I mean, if if this communication is not, the reconciliation communication is not secure, then like we have much bigger problems.
Much bigger problems, yeah. So
And
in
the
which case
data
we
is
don't even
still
need
ending
that
up
flag,
in
right?
memory in the agent, so there's no more
Yes.
exposure regardless of how it gets there.
Yes, in which case we don't even need that flag at the database level because firstly, we don't have a requirement right now of sensitive information.
No, it's not gonna be in the database level. It would just be another field in the settings module in the data structure.
I mean, right now we don't have any requirements like, I think we just overcomplicating it. I don't see any sensitive information requirement being sent to the agent anytime in the future. No, like, and if it is even at this settings module, which means the cost of introducing it later in future iteration wherever it is required is very low, right? So we should just do the minimal thing right now, which is
Ordinarily, I would be convinced by that, but this is with security. It's like we would have to remember to add this the next time we add a sensitive thing. We're not going to be thinking about this. So that's
but like you just said, even if it is a sensitive information, that communication is any which way protected by TLS by the same authorization strategy.
But we have to be intentional about what is allowed to be sent to an agent. So what I'm worried about is like some other token that we put in remote development settings that has nothing to do with agents, and then somebody can randomly run any agent and then look in the open source to pull that field and pull it. So I want all of those default to be not be able to be sent to agent. Does that make sense?
Sounds good. Sounds good. The only, yeah, that's a convincing argument.
First of all, like, are you following along, Xiaoqun? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I think I'm following. So what we're talking about is like for the settings, it's a dynamic field. So let's say the agent can put in multiple fields as it likes, and then it will be sent back from the Rails to the agent. Of course, we'll do the validation on the Rails side and with the flags. But I understand that, but I have a question. So I mean, from my knowledge, I think we have a simpler solution, which is, let's say, because what I see, we are talking through the protobuf and gRPC at the moment between the Rails and the agent. So what if we just define the settings and we expose the fields we want via the API? So let's say when we make the request, Rails side will always return those consistent fields. And on the agent side, we will say, we need to read this, we need to read that. So you know what I mean? Like instead of like making a request saying, oh, I want field 1, field 2, on the Rails side, we always return field 1, 2, 3, 4, and those are only allowed fields being returned, and there's no sensitive at all. I mean, my initiative, my intuitive thinking was like that, which I think is one of
that's a good point. Rather than like can be sent to agent, it's just like send to agent, and then the agent doesn't have to ask for it. We would always want to send the same things to all agents, I assume. Yeah, that's a good point. Then
yeah, I mean, and also that removes the knowledge on agent side, because if the agent sends a request which contains multiple fields to Rails, this means agent needs to know what Rails exposes, right? What Rails takes. But in the other round, like what I proposed is like the agent has limited knowledge about what Rails can do, and Rails is the thing that in charge and control what we want to send back. So kind of like that, if that makes sense.
So my question there and concern, and maybe this is like my lack of knowledge of Go, if we do it that way, can we still implement it in a way that older agents like don't care about receiving extra data? Is that possible?
I think so. I'm not sure, Michelle.
That's why that's sort of why I said do the approach where the agent asks for it and then it knows to only care about what it asked for and ignores everything else. But however we do that.
So after this introduction, we can do it, but for all the previous ones, we won't be able to because of the way it is right now, and there are still ways to bypass this. Let me actually share my screen and
yeah, I'm assuming like even if we do it regardless, we're going to be backward compatible with existing, but after that we will be.
After that we could be backward compatible.
Even if we do what Xiaoqun just said and just send everything that is relevant.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Then that's
so that means, yeah. So that means like fields on the API. So let's say we have the field 1, and now we have a field 2 on the API. And for the old version, let's say old version of the protobuf, buff, they will say, oh, I only read from field 1, and the new, let's say our settings field is being safely ignored for those old version of the, using the protobuf, buff, if that makes sense. So those should be fine.
So
Make
that would, like, what does that actually look like? The settings would just be an array of other structures and you can make Go like ignore stuff that it doesn't care about?
We shouldn't do that. What we should rather do is have settings as a map of interface. Interface can be anything, like a map of something. And within that, we'll explicitly define whatever fields we need in the future. But what we'll do is rather keep each field as optional. So even if and the end, we'll like keep the settings thing. I'm sure there will be some protobuf definition that even if there are extra fields over here, just ignore them. Don't throw out an error, right? If there are extra fields sent inside the settings hash, just ignore them and don't throw out an error. That way we become backward compatible. So when we want to, let's say right now, let me share my screen. I'll show you what I mean by that.
And then the ones that do exist, then we can put them in another structure that type checks them and make sure that they're required in what they want.
Yes. So
I mean,
Golang,
but what's the protobuf version we are using on the agent Kubernetes agent? Because I think if we use a Proto 3, by default, all the fields are optional. There's no required field anymore. Like everything's optional.
I honestly don't remember though. I'll have to check which one is that. So this is the one, right? Workspace agent info. So this will just say something like settings, and we'll first define a settings struct over here and type struct. Type settings struct, and within that we'll say, let's say, full reconciliation.
But this isn't the protobuf. This is the application level structure. So it's like after protobuf, right? Yeah, I just want to confirm.
Yes,
thanks.
Yes. After protobuf, we don't even have to worry about the protobuf. So this will be an int, right? Interval, and let's say something like partial, and we'll keep this as full reconciliation interval. Partial. And there are ways in JSON where we can say it is optional and things like that, right? Omit empty and you see.
The part I'm still missing, like, what if there's like another random field that we send in the future? Right?
Yes.
Rails starts sending, and what makes that work?
So if that's the case, we first need to update the protobuf version on this agent report, right? And then after that, we need to update this structure. So let's say the settings now have to ask for shell type, and then we need to add in the new fields in here as well, and then adding the code.
That means I'm confused now. Is it backward compatible when there's an older agent running that's got this, and then
so
the upgrade Rails starts sending, full setting?
Yeah, I think it is backward compatible because let's say on the Rails side we are sending actual field, right? And on the agent side, it doesn't. So on the agent side, the protobuf version is the older version. So at first, it will ignore this additional field and then it will return the payload without that field. And on your application code, it will say, I'll just proceed what it looks like.
We're relying on left to ignore that field.
So it is.
Yes, and it works out of the box. I don't think we have to do anything over here because of the way Golang works. Like, I'll give you an example. I just found an example. I just shared my screen over here. Where's my screen? Come on. You're able to see my screen, right?
Yeah.
Line number 28.
Wait, did you typing this? You typing this yourself, or is that default?
I got an example. Don't worry. I'm very lazy otherwise.
Okay.
Okay. So chat here I've defined. Let's say this will be my settings, right? This is my settings, and this is my full reconciliation interval, I just call this as an int, and I will call this as full reconciliation interval, right? And I will just pass along this as 4. And let's say there are new settings that have been introduced in the future, like number pointer. So this is the data that Rails will send, right? At the go side, when I'm unmarshal, basically loading that into JSON, it will just ignore those fields and it will just return me the
Yeah,
uh,
yeah, yeah,
full reconciliation. Sorry, it's called no longer called dummy. It's called settings.
yeah.
Yeah, you see, so it will just ignore the extra fields that it is sending by the nature of the way it does JSON loading and how these things work over here. So the settings can keep on increasing. So let's say right now we have only one setting, Rail is sending one settings. In the future, we've introduced a new setting. So a version of the agent will have 2 settings. Rails will also send 2 settings. But in the old version, Rails will still send 2 settings, but over here it will just load that one setting and ignore the other setting. So that's how it
Yeah.
becomes backwards compatible. The reason why the current changes are not backward in fact, right now it also will become backward compatible because it will just ignore the setting over here. So yeah, it will just
Yeah.
work.
That's the
Yeah,
default
it will.
behavior.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's nothing
And-
going
and
to be
so-
breaking.
Yeah, so that just adding that up. So that is for adding a new field. If we delete a field, as long
That's
as that delete field is not marked as required, then we are not, it is also backward compatible. But we are deleting a required field in the protobuf, it makes it not backward compatible. But the things like the good thing is if we are already migrate to Proto 3, every field is by default optional and nobody declare required field anymore. But if we are using like an older version on the Proto 2, then you have to say it is required or optional.
Just one nuance over here. These things are not the protobuf things. Like these are just standard Golang structs.
I
These are not
understand.
powered
I
by-
understand.
Yeah. So,
But I mean,
the protobuf thing, yes.
But
So
protobuf is a layer 1, and then this is like an actual layer
Yeah.
after protobuf. So
Yeah.
this is application code, and we control that. So we always make it backward compatible, right? And we should worry more about the protobuf, but I don't think that's a problem. That's my point.
And so when we add the settings to the protobuf, the settings entry, it will be made required, which is fine because that's like the newer.
It's
We
not
will not
required.
keep it required. We will
No,
not
no,
keep
no,
it
it is
required.
optional.
No, not like the settings itself should be required, but
No.
the things in
No,
it.
it's still optional. No, it's still optional.
Why
Everything is
Because the
optional.
way, if you make settings required, it will break the existing agents altogether. If you make settings itself optional, we still
No, but like
there
the
is
that's if the protobuf is deployed as part of the agent, right? It's on that side, or is it on the cast side?
It's on both sides. So we need to import
Oh, okay, I got it. I
on
got
both
it.
sides. Yeah. So the protobuf is being used when we make the gRPC request, and then on real side, we use the definition to encode the message. And on the agent side, we use maybe different version, but we'll use the protobuf to decode those like the
So,
gRPC.
The
Yes.
problem there is if they run a newer agent against an older Rails, then that will break, right?
No, it's still fine because it means let's say on the real side, we are not sending the new field, right? But the protobuf itself is smart enough to say, oh, because this field is optional and you are not sending it, I'll just show in a default value for you. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but when we add this, the agent has to run against the version of Rails that is sending settings, otherwise it'll blow up when we try to pull.
Well, it will grab a default value. So let's say in this case, we're not passing setting at all, and there are 2 fields, one is full, one is partial. And if Rails is on older version and it's not parsing it to the message, then on the agent side, we'll get full and it's int because the field is int, so default to 0. Because we're not passing any value, we'll say full is 0, the partial is 0. Which I mean, what we need to do is on we on application code side, when we decode this message, we'll say, if we pass in full, we are creating manual validation ourselves. If the full is 0, then we say, we just like to say, we change it to, let's say, 200. You know what I'm saying, like, chat?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if we want to do that, like have to duplicate the concept of defaulting on the agent side. I'd rather just specify that if you run this version of the agent, it has to be against this version of the Rails backend or higher, and then keep the defaults only on the Rails side.
We can make default to be something not 0. We can say default to 200.
But we don't
And
have
protobuf will
to.
say,
But we don't want to do that, Xiaoshan, is what Chad is saying. We don't
we don't
want
want to
any
do that.
defaults coded at the agent level. We want to control it at the Rails side. So, Chad, we can still do that. Just the absence of the field itself would suggest to us that, we don't even have to worry about this, right? We can just say the field would be absent. Like, for example, over here in this example, if I were, you saw how, because that older version of the agent will not have that field defined itself. Even if we are sending extra information from Rails, it will not be able to access it because
I'm talking
its
about the other
definition.
case. I'm talking about somebody installs and runs the latest version of the agent
on the agent
against an older Rails, which is not sending any settings field at all.
That's still fine. It's not sending any settings field. It will send something, right?
No.
Yeah, even if it does not send, even if it does not send any settings, it will still work because this setting itself is nested under another configuration, right? Like this itself can be optional.
Right, but I'm saying there's going to be logic in the agent which depends on these fields existing, the full reconciliation.
Yeah.
We don't
I
want
understand.
logic that makes
Yeah.
all of these optional. That's like unnecessary logic on the agent. Like we should design the philosophy is the agent is as dumb as possible, as simple as possible. And I want to say, and also type safe as possible. So we should say, okay, going forward, once we make this change, the settings field is expected. It may have things in it that are, one or more things that if we care about them, we use them, we assume they're there, right? And on the deployment, we have to make in the release notes to say, this version of the agent must run against, 17.1 or later, right? You can't run this version with remote development enabled, you cannot run this version of the agent unless you have this version. And then we don't have to put any of this defaulting or defensive coding on the agent side. It just assumes this, whatever it needs is there because it's going to be running.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're saying. But one thing I learned with protobuf is think about the case where every field is optional, right? And on the consumer side, let's say for the field 1, if we are getting the default value on the application layer, we are not able to tell this field is not passing or we are passing 0. Which means if you think about this, let's say we do pass in a setting and the setting full intro is being set to 0 and it's sent from Rails. And the agent get this 0 intro value, what are we gonna do? We still need to do the validation, right? And on the agent side, we can't tell it is because the Rails is on an older protobuf version, so it's not sending, and we are getting the default value, or the Rails is deliberately sending this 0 value. You know what I mean? So we need to handle this case either way.
If the field is completely gone on the consumer side here, you'll get the field, but just with the default 0 value.
Yeah. You will get
That's how Go works.
That's the protobuf how it works.
That's not even like forget protobuf. That's how all variables would work in Go. Every type like string, the default value for a string is an empty string. The default value for an integer is 0. The default value for a Boolean is false. So there's a default value which is assigned to all variable types. That just eliminates most of the nil problems that we would have generally.
Right, but that we should those individual fields that we care about should not be made optional. We should say that they're there, because we should always say that it's okay to require a more recent version of the backend, but it's
So you say it is required at which layer? It's at protobuf layer or at application on agent side, application code layer.
it's
So
a
which
decision to
layer?
be made. Like the trade-off is, okay, we want to be able to support older versions of agents running against a Rails that is sending new fields it doesn't know about. But
I
we
think
also
to
want to be able
me-
to support newer agents running against an older Rails that is not sending fields that it cares about. If we want to do that, then we can't get away without duplicating the default values on the agent side. And maybe we
But
want to.
with protobuf, there's
Is that a deal breaker? Let me be the devil's advocate over here.
Well, no,
Because
I'm saying maybe we want to do that. Maybe we want to.
have a default in
It
the
makes our lives
those are-
easier. Yeah, we have to do
yes.
these defaults, but then like we don't care and it's not going to break in any case.
Yeah, and exactly what I'm saying is if they are an older version of Rails, fine. This is what you will get for the older version of Rails. If you want a feature where this has to be configurable, upgrade your Rails or downgrade your agent.
Yeah, so I think that convinces me. So like we have to duplicate the defaults on the.
yeah, I think so. I think so.
And right now, the only settings that we are passing are like very minimal, like integers and all of these things. The current full reconciliation interval and partial reconciliation interval is already set as a constant in the agent right now. So that's still fine. I don't think it's a deal breaker, to be honest. I think it just makes our life really
I think it's
simpler and we
okay.
should.
We,
Yeah.
My main concern is like just forgetting to keep them in sync, but we can put like a comment, above every field in the defaults. I'm about to touch that file like and refactor it a little bit. You already did it, pulled it out, but like the idea I had for the documentation for this stuff, that the issue I have, I'm just going to make a Rails view that auto generates a table based on all of these settings. And then we can iframe that into our dots or whatever the hell we want. That's how I'm going to solve
Perfect.
it. And
Yeah.
Probably we'll need a sensitive field, to like mask anything that's a thing or whatever, but yeah, we'll just put comments above all of these, like if you change this value, make sure you update it on the agent as
Yes.
well, the default.
Yes. That's a good idea.
To me, I think the default interval on Rails and on agent serves different purposes. Because if we think about on the agent side, now I think it's only making API to the Rails, but potentially there will be other upstreams. They will make requests to from different, let's say, projects and then fetching the value back. And their project might have different configurations. So like the configuration we put in on the agent side is more like defensive approach, because Rails could sending back, let's say, -10 as integer, or let's say 0. And we can't just like without any single validation, we just like apply the value, but we trust the Rails by default. We can't do that. Or let's say all the upstreams.
Oh, we have to. So we
have to put in some basic validation saying the number has to be between, let's say, this and this, right?
So that will be covered as part of our end-to-end test. We like Rails is our single source of truth of everything. Like the agent has to trust what Rails is sending. What you're saying can be covered by an end-to-end test, which says that Rails never sends a 0 value, right? For this particular thing. That's easy to do at the Rails side, which is, hey, this value cannot be set, like a full reconciliation interval cannot be set to 0, right? So we can do that as a test. But doing that at the agent
is built into the settings module. Like we can validate whatever we want there.
Yeah, I understand. I understand, let's say we validate everything on the real side and then setting the correct value. But what I'm saying is like on the other side, on the agent side, it should still have the minimum logics. So let's say the number I'm getting has to be between 100 to 200.
No,
you can't give
it
me. Doesn't.
We're always just going to assume Rails is sending us valid data.
Oh,
We
okay.
own both sides of this. We don't have to defensively code the like. Did we put a bug in the Rails side? Like we should write a test.
Yeah,
or
yeah, yeah.
application on the
I mean,
Rails
if that's the case, then now I understand why you care about the default value for
Yeah,
those
if you
intervals.
own all the code, you shouldn't be defensive about yourself. Just don't make the bug in the first place.
Yeah, understood. I mean, if that's
So
the case, then
why he's talking about default is because, let's say, Zaushan, you are on
I understand
Agent.
on an older version of Rails and newer version of agent, right? So the
Yes,
Rails is not
and that value, yes, and Rails is not passing any value. And if you just your integer, the default value of the integer in Golang, if not set, would be 0, which means your that is an invalid value over there, right? So we need to, so for each setting it will depend, like we cannot generalize this, but each setting, what will the default value over there for an integer, for a full reconciliation interval, it makes sense to keep it as 10 minutes, or for a partial interval it makes sense to keep it as 1 minute. But if there's a different setting, what will the default value will depend upon what that value is really doing and what is the impact of the absence of that value. So there's no way we can generalize this, but it'll be on a case-to-case basis.
So
Yeah.
okay. So what we are talking about is on the agent side, there's no validation. It will just take the value. And then on the Rails side, it will do all the logics there. That's
The
what
only
we're talking
validation that is there on the agent side is type check. That's about it. Everything
check.
else,
Okay.
yes,
Okay.
because
In
it's
that
Golang.
case, if we do that's doing in this way, adding a new settings field, what we have to make sure the Rails is rolled out on a newer version first before we roll out like an agent on a newer version. We have to make sure that otherwise, it just you might
No,
get
that's gonna be
default.
okay. If Rails is sending something to an older agent, the agent will ignore it. If there's a newer agent that's expecting something Rails doesn't send, it's gonna choose a default value. I think the only edge case is like, if we want, like in the case of an integer, like whatever the default in Golang is, for an integer, it's a 0. If we actually
Yeah.
want to support 0, that's like an edge case, but I think we can
I
just
see.
say, no, it's not. And like enforce that on the Ruby side, say, no, nothing in the setting, like it must be 1 or greater. Like we don't support 0.
Right, I see. I
So
think with
Zaushan, only what you have to do over here is basically when you're defining the settings module, right? You just
you take
say
default.
that this would be a default of 10 or whatever, right? 10 minutes or whatever. You just said this is what we want. And there are ways to do this, right? In the JSON library itself.
Understood.
So that's
Like,
about it. That's what you have to do.
yeah, in addition to that, I think we have another way to do is on the protobuf. So on the protobuf, we can define the field has a default value other than 0. So let's say if Rails is not sending that, we will say default to not 0, but let's say 100. We can do that as well.
Yes,
I think we can, but I mean, maybe we need both layer, or maybe that's just like with this application layer is good.
Yes, that application. I'm not sure where these protobuf definitions are generated. Let's see, build.
I think it's in, I found it actually. It's defined in agent repo, and then we also build a Ruby gem, and Rails actually import that
Yeah,
gem.
what you're talking about is like the protobuf definitions are completely different from what this is, which is what you're talking about is this, which is the agent configuration itself.
Yeah. I understand.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but that's you see that this is the agent configuration. And what we are talking about over here is not related to
The
the agent
application
configuration. This is
level
not,
configuration.
this is the application logic. This is not related to the protobuf. This is just a simple gRPC communication over whatever the struct is, like nothing else.
Wait, does that
Yeah.
mean that all that we said about protobuf and optional fields is not?
It's still valid because it's not related to protobuf. It's Golang stuff over here. Because what I
So the
showed you over
protobuf
here
is
right
the
now.
first layer. The API will be encoded and decoded by protobuf. That's first layer, and then we translate the protobuf definition into our the Vishal showed here. It's a Golang definition. So that's so it's a process like that.
Where's
Right,
the
Vishal?
protobuf for the workspace Rails info?
I am so confused now.
Like this is workspace agent info. You put this in the wrong one. It should be in workspace Rails info, actually.
Workspace Rails info. Oh, this is the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, a little bit
Rails is what,
confusion. Yeah, this is the one.
or no. I'm, am I
Rails
wrong?
info. Yeah, this is the one.
Yeah, Rails is what comes from Rails, what comes from agent.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
So where is the protobuf definition for the workspace Rails info?
There is no protobuf definition. As far as I think, this is not over protobuf.
This is not over.
Like the agent configuration is, I know this is a gRPC communication. gRPC communication is normally over protobufs. I don't know if there is some plumbing which auto generates this information somewhere, but I'm not really dug deeper into it.
But, okay, so this is not using protobuf, then does the behavior of ignoring things that are extra still
Does
apply?
not matter. Like it still applies because of way Golang does JSON loading and unloading.
Okay. Then I'll just ignore it.
But if it's
Yeah.
not gRPC, it is HTTP, the
It
RESTful
is
HTTP.
gRPC. It is gRPC, and I know gRPC usually, if not always uses protobuf. Under the hood, there might be some plumbing. I just don't know where that plumbing is set because we don't generate any protobuf definitions for these structs that we're defining over here.
Yeah, I think like the plumbing between CAS and agent is you just maybe just
Okay.
Yes.
kind of anything generically.
Oh, okay. So see, what happens is the way this communication happens is there is a gRPC communication between the agent and CAS. CAS then makes, I think, another gRPC communication to the Rails instance, right? And it's just
Yeah.
acting as a simple proxy. That's about it. So I'm not sure where the protobuf the definitions for these are
Well,
generated.
CAS makes a the agent talks gRPC to CAS, and CAS makes a HTTP REST call to Rails. That's how the
Okay.
agent comes in, and then the response to that I think is like just proxied back along that
Yeah.
somehow.
Yeah, it's like we don't even have to worry about it. To be honest, every time I talk about it, I'm always more confused than I was earlier.
Right, which is why I want to
Uh,
leverage this. It's like it just works. Like all we need to do is add a field there and not worry about how it gets there.
Yeah, we don't have to worry about anything. We just define the field over here, define the default for that field, and everything will just work out of the box. If you are on a newer version of the agent with an older version of Rails which does not send this, it will use the default value. If you're on the newer version of Rails and an older version of the agent, Rails will send this information, but agent will just ignore it. And
We
that just
need to
works.
test, write a unit test for both of those cases.
Yeah.
I mean, so let's say we have CAS, we have Rails, and we have agent. Is there any gRPC code involved in the middle?
There is.
I think the agent talks gRPC to CAS, and CAS makes a HTTP call.
So it actually, no, the
API.
CAS GR, there is a gem which does that gRPC communication to Rails. So that I think is pure fully
okay.
on gRPC because that's what the CAS gem is for, which is loaded into.
Maybe you're right.
Okay, I
but,
mean,
like it
my-
still
my-
ends up hitting like the REST API, like the grape
Yes.
API.
Yeah, the grape
went
API.
over RPC.
Hence, yeah, probably I'm more
But
confused.
my thinking is like even though we are not using protobuf, as long as we are using gRPC, there will need be a definition of the message we are passing along, right?
This is the
And if we're
definition.
not updating that, oh, this is the one.
Yeah.
This is it.
Oh, I see. Oh, that's interesting. So if something just read from the Go like application layer structure and then turn that into like a message.
Yeah, the plumbing has been done everywhere else, is what I was telling you. The plumbing has
Oh,
been.
I didn't know that we can do that. I mean, that's interesting. That's magic.
Yeah,
Here it
that's the
is.
whole reason we built this on top of CAS and GitLab Agent for Kubernetes, because it handles all of this communication for us.
Oh, that's interesting. Oh, cool.
Yep. And it does all of the funky stuff that we really need. All the heavy lifting is already done by
I
the
see.
And
agent.
our
We
plan-
just
Now I know
we
why
just write the
why-
application logic.
That's why Michelle keeps saying there's no protobuf, there's no protobuf involved. You don't need to worry about that. I was like super confused, but now I understand. Yeah.
Yes.
Furthermore, can you go back to the protobuf for the agent configuration, Michelle? Our plan is to move as much of this stuff as we can over to the settings so we don't have to maintain it here. Right? How many of these can we move? Probably most,
of them.
all of them?
The enabled one, which is what we'll have to keep over here because,
Right.
well, technically, shit.
Wait, I'm confused. This is protobuf, isn't it?
Okay, so
I'm
there are
confused.
different communications going on. This is
the configuration
agent
of GitLab
configuration.
for Kubernetes itself. This is not a reconciliation loop. This is, but we leverage sending
The way the agent works is the agent has certain configuration, which it there is a protobuf definition of, okay, what is the agent's configuration? Is remote development enabled over here? What is the DNS zone for this? And these are like instance level settings, so to speak, for the GitLab agent, right? For the entire agent, these are the settings available. And now using the settings, if it is enabled, it will then run this reconciliation loop for remote development, where it will make a call to Rails and it will get that information from Rails. And this is the information it will get from Rails, right? And we then act on it.
I see. Oh, no, I understand. Oh, this is like complicated. I was like,
Oh yeah.
I used to be mixing that together. I literally look at that protobuf. I was thinking, oh, this is the protobuf talking between the Rails and I was, I mean, thanks
So
so much.
if you go back to the agent protobuf, Vishal, like this is a little bit of technical debt. Like we had this before we like had the reconciliation loop completely in place and this. So theoretically, all we need here is the minimum setting we need to start the reconciliation loop, which I probably just enabled. Enabled,
that's about it.
And then all of these other fields can then get moved over to there and we don't have to maintain them in the protobuf either.
And technically we can also move enabled or away from here by, forcing GitLab agent to request us some information. It will require more logic and coding from our end, but that itself is doable, which is, from Rails, we somehow tell agent, hey, I have some changes for you. Can you just request those changes? You remember the poking thing that we are telling? Remember, Chad, we investigate that poking thing. It's still doable. Whether we want to put in that effort or not is a matter for debate, but it's still doable. So right now,
like
the minimum.
In that case, it would just directly come from the database and not even rely.
Yeah, everything.
Anymore. Which is the direction we want to go. And then everything is configurable through the UI cross that we can finally get settings UI. And then everything is through the UI.
Yes.
All flows through the settings. It all flows through that data structure. It's all done the same way. And then like the problem Dylan just had, like, oh, your thing's not enabled. Like we don't, it'll be in the UI.
Yeah.
It'll be the your JSON file in the agent repo.
Yep. So that's the idea. The first step would be just to keep this enabled over here and then to see how we can even remove this enabled from here as well. So that's, there's a cohesive way of configuring remote development workspaces for agent.
So this approach is like unlocking a lot of cleanup that we've wanted to do for a while, I think.
Yep, for sure.
Okay, sure, understood. Yeah, but it's out of scope of the current thing, right? Issue I'm discussing. Yeah, but it's something in the back.
It's easy. We basically just add those defaults on to the one file, the defaults on the Rails side, move them to the other data structure with the right JSON declaration, boom, done.
Yeah. Okay, sure.
But don't do it as part of this scope. Don't worry. Don't.
No. And I'm getting excited that this is like unlocking some, cleaner architecture.
Yeah.
We don't, and if we get rid of enabled, then we don't even have any protobus for this. It's just the agent and dumber, which is good.
So one of the design goals is to keep the agent as dumb as possible. And that is by design. The agent is just like, as the name suggests, an agent. It will do whatever it is told to do. That's about it. The agent will not question you or ask you why or, start using its brain. It will just act as a very dumb agent. It's do this, it will do that.
Yeah, understood. I mean, That's something I realized like when I read the documentation that all the information is stored on the real side, and the agent will proxy, I mean, fetch those things as it goes. Yeah,
And the
those makes-
reason for this design decision is because not every customer regularly updates their agent. So for example, if there is some bug or there is some change in the design of how we want to do things, we cannot reliably roll out the changes, or we have to drag out the release for a very long cycle for even small changes. So we've designed the agent in such a way that, okay, it will send over some Kubernetes resources, but the agent does not really know which Kubernetes resources. That's about it. It just knows there is a Kubernetes resource. And then the agent will just apply all the Kubernetes resources that it gets and go on from there. So, it just starts playing along from
Because
that
like
fashion.
random people, it may not just be admins, it may be developers or whoever, who knows who has these agents out there, right? Running on their own clusters, like probably
Yeah.
they're related to it, but anybody can set up their own agent as long as they have the right permissions in the groups. So, we wanted to make it dumb. So like it's all dependent on the Rails side, and you don't have to upgrade these agents if you don't need to. Which
Yeah,
I
sure.
think the plan we have now, it's like, it's backward compatible, it's forward compatible, it fits with that philosophy.
Okay, sure.
Okay, so for action items for this issue, Xiaosheng, are you clear on what are the next steps, which is?
Let's say we need to communicate with this person, the Mikhail, right?
I think
Regarding to
we're
our
done. Like he just said in the thread, like, he's this approach.
okay. Yeah.
So
So
we're just doing due diligence, asking what our other options are, but I still think this is the best option. And
okay,
so
sure.
I think we need to write up,
Design like a summary.
I mean, there's going to be two issues, one for the agent side and one's for the Rails side. But I think the first one can be the agent side and design this and design it in a backward compatible way. And then
Okay.
we add the change. So you're telling me that even if we make Rails start sending this new settings field as a top level thing in the Rails infos, it's not going to break against the agent, the existing.
I think so, yes.
The code right now.
No, I'm not sure because not using protobuf, so I'm not sure. But I mean, Vishal knows.
We need to test it.
Yeah.
But in either case, there's
Yeah,
Rails side change to like just add this field, and then an agent side change to add that. But we need to test to make sure it's platform compatible both ways.
So Xiaosheng, as an action item for this, first do a small change. Add 2 fields in the protobuf definitions of the agent, like I was just showing you, right? And just send it over. Do the same thing on Rails side.
Wait,
Test the communication.
Definition of the agent?
Not the protobuf, the normal communication truck
on the Rails.
On
On
the
the Rails
side,
setting.
just add a field.
On the Rails side, adding like a dummy field, and then agent doesn't know this field, and then testing it can get the field, also the field, it wouldn't blow up.
Yeah, it should not blow up.
Like you don't even need an issue for that. Like just you can if you want, but like just validate that our thesis is our hypothesis right. And if so, then there'll be like a tiny issue, like just add the field on the Rails side, and then another issue which is like add this.
Yeah, I'll just test locally, I guess. Like I'll test that. Yeah, sure. One more thing, like on the Rails side, do we know where that definition is? So where actually adding the field, new field? Because I searched on the Rails side, I didn't found where
I can show you that.
Yeah, sure. Thanks.
So if you look at where are we at? So here in where do we already inject the settings? I think here.
You remember, Chad, we used to not send namespaces every time.
Here we go. Not send namespaces every time.
You remember the Rails info has name, namespaces, resource config to apply, right? But the namespace value was not all sent always, right? But it was still used to work.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's an example that's in the create chain, right? We're in under remote development workspaces create, and this is the remote dev chain. And if you look here and so let's start at the top, right? So looking at the README, right, and our diagram here. So starting at the Rails monolith and the controller, and then like great, just to give you a whole overview of where this is happening. So we got Kubernetes.rb here. This is like where the first place we get control when something comes in from CAS, like a request from the agent. And you see here this namespace modules remote development. This is basically just a REST API. Have you used Grape before? It's just a DSL for defining a REST API. And then here we have this remote development endpoint. So agent talks to CAS talks to Rails, it comes in here and hits this endpoint, and we get control of it. And this endpoint is called reconcile. So this is at this layer here, right? The Grape API. Whoops, I lost it. Hold on. There you are. So then if we go back to the Kubernetes, what does this do? It goes down to, it does a license check and then immediately calls the service. No logic here at all. So then we're jumping down to the services layer. And what does that do? Really dumb, intentionally. All it does is kick off the main class, right? And here it injects the settings. So here's the magic, right? The settings is coming from, over here, the defaults initializer, which the change you just made as, I don't even think I've rebased to get your change because I just merged it. This now lives in a separate file called default settings, right?
Yeah.
So when we kick off the main and we pass this hash in, just with the other stuff, the params from the request, our handle to the agent object, the logger, and the settings, and we pass those in. So we already do pass it in, and then so jump down to the next level, right? So now we're past the service layer with the domain logic layer. We're in the main. Okay. So we're in here, and if you look where we why am I not seeing? So I think it's not used here, right? I went ahead and injected it everywhere when I set up the settings module because I knew we would probably want it. But the only place it's currently used is in the create, not the reconcile. So you can see in here, that's what it will look like. Wherever we use it in the reconcile railway-oriented programming chain, we'll get the value, which is that hash that it, initially got passed down. We will, out of the value, destructure out, type check the settings, the same thing that got passed. And then out of the settings, we'll destructure out, type check the things we want. And this could be all of the things. Like this will probably be some custom logic when we actually write it to say like, to check each one like send to agent field and then only pick out the ones that are send to agent and then send those over. So like, let's look at where that would actually happen. I don't actually know. We could, probably it'll be a new step like somewhere around here, because here's where we're building the Rails infos. And if you look on the Golang side, like wherever the code we were here. Oh yeah, I have it highlighted. Workspace Rails info, this is exactly the structure we were looking at. And this maps to this stuff we're sending on this side. So probably, you know, somewhere right before this step will, or after it, I don't know. It could either be before or after, right? We're just sticking this workspace Rails info into the value that is getting passed along the chain. So either before, but probably after this, right? Because this is the thing that creates it. We'll add a step like inject settings into workspace Rails info. So it'll be a new cohesive thing. That's its only job. And it'll do something that looks just like we were looking at over on here, to like grab the settings out and do the logic, only the ones for the agent, grab out the Rails infos that came, that the previous step created and put in there, jam in the settings, boom, then they're here and they'll show up just like we were seeing that.
I see. Yeah, sure.
Does that all make sense?
Yeah. Totally.
And it's recorded.
Okay.
To look at this part again. If you forget.
Yeah. I was thinking like, so we have recording, and so I can just like jump between the files chat showed us. I don't have to like make a record on my end now, so that's great.
Yeah, we can pair on it as well if you're
Yeah,
facing any trouble. Just hit
definitely.
me or chat up and we can pair
I'll
up
be
on
back.
the time.
Yeah, I'll be back in San Francisco next week and can find my regular schedule, working late like this.
Cool.
We're
That's
all good.
awesome.
I think this is a great plan. And like, yeah, like we said, this is gonna unlock a lot of cleanup that we wanted to do, and like ideally eliminating, if we can do the poking thing, eliminating all dependency on the agent config, because like that confuses everybody. Like it's most of the requests we get about people's stuff being broken. Do you agree, Vishal?
Sorry, I lost you in the middle of
I'm
it.
saying like not most, but like a lot of the things we get, like Dylan just had now. It's like, is it enabled? No. Well,
Yeah.
if that were
Like,
the UI, it would be a lot better. It's so obscure.
to be honest, a lot of the issues are just very trivial, but the challenge is how do you get people up and running? That part is the complicated part. Everything else, like we have solid foundations, to be honest. The onboarding is what is really painful. Like, and I'm saying that Chad and I are saying that as someone who worked on this from the beginning, right? That yes, we know it's really painful and we want to make it as error-free as possible for you. And these are some of the ways which we can do it. And this is a significant challenge for adoption. Just the sheer setting up and the possibility for errors is so high that it becomes difficult. And honestly, we just need more and more people to bug us with such questions, that why is this not working? Why do you not have this validation? Why is such a trivial thing not there? That will force us to do these things, because right now these things are not really prioritized. And yeah, that's about it. It's just a matter of people really getting more pissed off at us so that we will prioritize it. You're laughing, but you would be surprised. This is how our entire backlog strategy is.
And it's just been there. Now that we have all of you new people on the team, we can fix some of this stuff. Like it's not like we haven't known about it, but like this is awesome. Like, right, Vishal? If once we get this in place, then we can move everything but enabled out. And then it's like, okay, no dependency on the agent config, which we dislike because it's managed through Git. If they get it wrong, like first of all, it's hard to find, it's weird.
Yes.
If they get it wrong, then there's no feedback. There's absolutely no error. And like we've asked the environments team to like add some sort of error checking to it, but that's not prioritized. So that'll at least get everything but enabled out of it. And then if we could set up this poking, like when we talk about that, it's just like the agent somehow saying, hey, ask the database, you know, through CAS, ask the database, is remote development enabled? And that could be a UI option. And then that removes the final thing that is in this agent config to enabled. And then it's like, okay, then all of the documentation we have, like for the agent config and all of that, just could just go away. And it's like any other feature. Hey, you just control this through the GitLab UI through settings and options.
Yeah.
So
And you know, the
that's
poking thing
nature
is the
we're
more,
getting close
the
to
poking
it.
thing is the most sophisticated thing. We could be just like every 3 hours, the remote development module will just check in with Rails every 5 hours or once in a day, right? Am I allowed to ask for reconciliation? If no, I'll just sit quiet. If yes, here, I'll just continue. That's about it. Like that could be the most simplest solution. If the poking is over complicating and over engineering it, right? We don't even have to do that. Once in a day is a significant, it's a great amount. And if the customer wants it early, they could just delete the agent pod and recreate it. It will just ask for it immediately.
Yeah, but point being, that's, we can get rid of everything but enabled, and like, once we get
Yeah.
rid of enabled, we just delete this huge source of confusion for everybody of having to
Yes.
manage this weird file.
Yeah. And if the challenge with, even if there is some sort of validation, because it is not synchronous and the feedback would be asynchronous in nature, that in itself presents some challenges, which is what Chad has been a champion of, that we should get it in the UI so that the feedback loop is faster.
And that's why I just made that MR to like the philosophy of the settings, like the environment variables, you know, are only for early adopters or only for like global testing overrides. Everything else should live in UI, and we should have a place for it in UI. And so it's just like any other feature. It's not some weird ass, we have to document everything and then nobody reads it anyway, and then we have to.
Hey, this is being recorded.
What?
Don't worry. I was just saying this is being recorded, but don't worry. No one is going to listen to this 1 hour.
1
into
hour
this.
already, like if they all quit after 20 seconds.
I don't mind. It's like transparency. I'm not saying anything that's not true, and they can't figure out by looking at the code.
Yeah, I do that often. I do that often. I'm not worried. Setting up a
Okay.
good example. We have new folks, Chad.
No, pessimism is a good character trait.
Cool,
We
cool.
should present the truth.
Okay, so yeah, like, so the steps are like, this issue turns into something, or do we want to like close this as an investigation issue and then like
Oh
rewrite?
no, we don't. I don't think an investigation would be too much. Like Zaushan, you can just do that simple change and just verify if agent crashes or not, if Rails sends something extra. And if that is the case, then I think we are clear on what needs to be done, which is agent side.
Oh, this is an epic. I also forgot we were commenting on the epic. Okay, so we just need the two issues, like one for the Rails side, one for the agent side, created under here.
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yes. So once you're done with that, you could take a step on creating these two issues and tag Chad and me on it,
Well,
and we'll just refine it
there's
further.
already-
And
Hold on, let me share my screen. There's already this one, right? What is?
so this is just for introducing the environment variables. Now, what happens post the introduction is what we are talking about. Use those environment variables to send it through the reconciliation loops to agent, and then another MR on the agent side, which will use those.
This is already done. This is the one you just done. So the Rails side is already done. Okay. got
No,
it. No?
no.
Yes.
So that MR is just.
Yeah, we added
Who
it.
did this?
Yeah,
did
we just
this?
did this. Zhaochen already did this and it's already merged, like they exist. So we need another one. This is like adding the variables. We're gonna need one, which is like adding that logic that I just talked about, right? To pull it out of the settings, check it, maybe, you know, and add the flags into agent. That's on the Rails side. And then we need another one on the agent side to consume them. So those are the two.
I just saw it was named as seconds. Yeah, the seconds, right? Can you just reopen that MR? Full reconciliation. All right.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
in
Perfect.
seconds.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, because otherwise, like 100 hours. Yeah.
Like that's wild.
Yeah, I saw that, and it's like, yeah, that's a good name. Like, be specific about what the units are.
Perfect. That's
So,
good. And
Who's gonna create
once
those two issues? Do you want to take a shot at it, Zhaochen? Okay, cool.
I can do that. I can do that. Yeah,
Make sure
I'll
that
give
when
it
you do them, you use the
Epic, right? Link it to Epic.
well, use the template,
Oh, okay.
remote development. And this is in our handbook page, but use this template.
Okay.
I'm not gonna,
Yeah, sure, understood.
I'm not gonna hit save on this, but I'll just show you.
Mm.
Right, this template has the instructions and how to fill everything out. The acceptance criteria is important, the technical requirements, like if there's any UI, like there's no design, so you could just put like, there's no UI on this, there's no design requirements. Impact assessment, you can put that if you want. User story, we usually don't, only if it's like important and user facing, or just delete this. And then the labels, like they should be mostly all right, but just make sure you use this template and fill it out.
Yeah, sure, understood. Yeah. All the procedures have to learn the tags. I'm sort of learning tags at the moment, like which tag to use in which repo at the moment. Yeah. Just,
Yeah,
yeah,
like-
that's good.
We try to keep our process as minimal as we can, but it's like the parts we do have are to reduce confusion.
Yeah. All good. Cool. Yeah, I'll create those issues, then try to fill in the details, and then
And go ahead and close out this thread, like say, we've discussed this, we got a plan, and we're gonna create the issues and blah, blah, blah.
yeah, sure. All good. Thanks.
And I'll share this video in the remote development channel.
Just upload it on YouTube, on a channel, oh yeah. No, don't worry. No one is going to dig 1 hour deeper into the video and be like,
Joke.
I think
This
let's stop the
person is
recording
cussing.
now. Just stop recording now.
They said
Yeah,
they
we should-
they did things wrong and didn't have time to do it right because they didn't have enough developers.
oh, you know what? I'm fine if you don't upload it, just send it to Zosha.
Honestly, don't I hardly ever upload them. I guess I'll put it on unfiltered.
All right. I'm
Okay.
going
Bye.
to go take a bath. Bye-bye.
Yeah, thanks so much. Bye.